In Carolina, it feels like the music's already stopped, but the awkward dance continues at the quarterback position. Here is Matt Rule, the head coach of the team, who may be in danger, grave or otherwise, of being fired between now and the end of the season, talking about his plan for Cam Newton and Sam Darnold, who is back and ready to go.
Sam had, the MRI and the CT scan yesterday. They cleared him for contact. So, got him some reps in practice today. I thought he looked good out there. Cam will start the game. Will have a major role in the game, but Sam will play at some point.
Can I just make an observation since we're having some fun and it's close to Christmas? Would it be mean to say that it always looks like Matt Rule just rolled out of bed? Is that mean to say that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess he's got more important things going on than his fashion. I like his Rob Lowe hoodie, of the NFL shield instead of the Panthers logo.
NFL fan, that's right. Because you know what, he may not be attached to the Panthers next week at this time. But just a comb, a brush, a little spit on the fingers. Just a little. It doesn't take much. Just something to combat that look of straight off of the mattress and over to the press conference. Not that it's not a hallmark of successful coaches, because Bill Belichick, my God, some of the times he rolls in, it does look like he literally, he looked like he rolled out of bed and got the crap beat out of him by somebody on the way to the press conference. Look, we don't want to be facetious about someone's job, but the reality is next week is when interviews can begin of assistant coaches from other teams. And we've seen from David Tepper this impatience with quarterbacks. I assume he's going to be impatient with his coach. And if he has decided based on nearly 2 years that Matt Rule is not going to be Vince Lombardi or Bill Belichick, some sort of perennial great coach, he may be looking for someone else, and he may be ready to make the move and willing to pay the buyout, whatever it is. The guy's got billions. He's one of the richest owners in the NFL, and he recognizes that's a sunk cost if he's going to do that. Why are you going to keep a guy you want just to justify the money that you're going to pay him anyway? I'm paying him either way. If I don't want him here, I'll pay him to not be here, and I'll pay somebody else that I think would be better as the coach of the team. So this is an important week. And by the way, Cam Newton, 2-0 lifetime record as a starter against Tom Brady. So he has that going for him. I don't think it's going to get to 3-0,
nice.
but we'll see.
Now, I don't really think it is either. I mean, remember when the Panthers were 3-0, man? It just seems like ages and ages and ages ago, and now they've lost 9 of their last 11 games. And frankly, I don't really understand what they're doing here at the QB position. I mean, I guess I'll put it this way. There's a part of me that does, because Cam Newton's not getting it done. I mean, we saw last week when they're playing Buffalo and it's 4th and 1, and he checks into the bubble screen instead of just running the daggone ball up the middle. Why do you think you're there? You're not there to throw it to Robbie Anderson on 4th and 1. Run the freaking football and use your body and get the first down. And that's why Matt Rule basically had to come out and say, yeah, the way that was called by Jeff Nixon, who has now replaced the fired Joe Brady as offensive coordinator, that probably shouldn't have happened in that way. But I don't really understand why you need to have Sam Darnold play. I really don't. I don't feel like you brought in Cam Newton and paid him what you paid him to take reps with Sam Darnold. Are you kidding me? He threw 2 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in his last 5 starts. It's Sam Darnold. All right, I'm not understanding what you really need to see. I know that they've already guaranteed that money and the option for Sam Darnold next year, but what in the world do you need to see him play for? At least just let Cam Newton go out there and do it. Sam Darnold was one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league, just as he has been with the Jets. I don't really get. You have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And the Panthers have none, and I don't know what the strategy is there. I just don't.
Is it possible? And look, this is the problem. I was on radio earlier today in Chicago, and we're trying to figure out what the Bears are going to do. And when you have an organization that has flashes and elements and layers and levels of dysfunction, it becomes difficult to predict what they would do if you are approaching it as a reasonable and rational mind, because the dysfunction causes things to happen that you wouldn't ordinarily expect. But could it be that with Sam Darnold, the goal is to see if maybe he has a strong performance down the stretch that could dupe someone banking on the dysfunctionality of some other franchise out there that would see enough from Sam Darnold in late December and early January to maybe give them something for the final year of his contract at $18.8 million, much like Michael Scott trying to get someone to take the hand-knitted oven mitt in Yankee Swap. Basically, finding a sucker to take Sam Darnold. And what's going to happen is they will unload him if they can, and they're going to have to pay some of his salary. The question is, how much? They had to pay a lot of Teddy Bridgewater's to unload him for a sixth-round pick. And my guess is they'll find somebody to take on Sam Darnold, but they're going to have to pay somewhere between, I'd say, $7 and $15 million to unload him, and maybe they get closer to $7 million if he comes out and has 3 great games, and you can get somebody to get infatuated by that and then go back and look at his USC tape and look at his good. And you know, you've always got coaches, Miles, who delude themselves into thinking, I can get more out of this guy than anybody else ever has. And I can fix the bad. I can chase away Casper the Friendly Ghost that he always seems to see. I can fix him because the good that I see, if I can get it out of him consistently, we're going to do okay. So I think that may be their game plan here. Play him just enough to showcase him so there's some sucker out there that'll take him off their hands, because I'm sure they're done with him and they're done with Cam. Cam was just to sell tickets and build excitement and maybe take a shot at getting to the playoffs. They're going to be looking for their franchise quarterback, and they may be looking for their next head coach come January. And, you know, they're still technically alive, but come on. It's just a matter of time before we put the fork in the Panthers.
Yes. Well, I mean, if we haven't already done that, look, I mean, you talk about the dysfunction and stuff. If you are going to replace your offensive coordinator, then you're doing nobody any favors by not doing that when the bye week starts, right? Why did they wait so long to fire Joe Brady in the middle of everything and the Sunday where they're not playing, you know, news dumping that in the middle of the 1 p.m. games on the East Coast? So I think you're onto something here when you're talking about dysfunction, because if they were a little bit more functional, then I think you get rid of Joe Brady on that Monday. You allow Jeff Nixon to start working with Cam Newton and really just using that entire week to just plan things. Okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make sure that we're using you to the best of your ability? How do we make sure that we're using all the weapons that we have to the best of their ability? And I don't feel like when you wait a week to do that, you're really maximizing all of that time. So that's one element of it. I guess, you know, if somebody is going to be that much of a sucker, then they really should look at what Sam Darnold's tape has been his entire football play in life since he got to college. And living out here, I saw enough of Sam Darnold to know that that dude is turnover prone, and those things don't just go away. You talk about all the interceptions, fumbles, those things were still happening at USC. Can he throw the football well sometimes? Yes, absolutely. But it's almost kind of like Jameis Winston. Right? You know, can you really coach those bad things out of him? I don't know. I really don't know. So if somebody really wants to take that chance, great.
Well, the reality is there's 32 teams and they all need quarterbacks. And even though there are more decent quarterbacks, passable quarterbacks than there have ever been, there's a chance Sam Darnold is going to have a seat at the table somewhere. Either way, he's getting $18.8 million in 2022, so it's not going to be a bad year for Sam Darnold.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.